No, I got it. I got it.
Perfect, thank you.
A lot of snow. A lot of shoveling.
Good evening, everyone. Can I please have a motion to reconvene and a second to reconvene the public meeting?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for our servicemen and women? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the district clerk please call the roll?
Marisol Mallon, President.
Here.
April Anatelli, Vice President.
Present.
Jackie DiLorenzo, Trustee.
Present.
Sarah Parisi, Trustee. Melissa Torregrossa, Trustee.
Present.
Michael Ibrahim, Student Board Member. Dr. Joseph Senamore, Superintendent.
Present.
Bob Hauser, Assistant Sup for Business and Operations.
Present.
Reza Kolahifer, Assistant Sup for Admin Personnel.
Yep.
Christina Poppy, Assistant Sup for Curriculum and Instruction.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the January 8, 2026, the January 13, 2026, and the January 20, 2026 meetings?
Motion. Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Hauser, we have a presentation for the fiscal stress budget season. I'm very excited. It's my favorite season.
Thank you. Okay, so here we are for the second budget presentation. And this one's going to be on fiscal stress, not my stress, but fiscal stress, state aid, the tax cap, reserves, and the outstanding debt of the district. So once again, as we did with the first presentation, we have the calendar here for the whole budget cycle, and I highlighted in yellow where we are right now. So two other things to note. One of them is tonight there's a resolution for the board to review, and approve the budget guidelines for the 2026-27 school year budget. And then the other thing, we're going to show a slide on the state executive budget, which is really the governor's proposed state aid for the district. And also for the next upcoming presentation, which is on February 10th, I believe that's the only board meeting right now scheduled for February. We'll be talking about staffing, programs, and enrollment. Okay, fiscal stress. So the New York State Comptroller's Office has been monitoring school districts. They've been monitoring fiscal stress and also something called environmental stress. So for fiscal stress, they're focusing on a total of 6 indicators. One of them, indicator number 1, is the unassigned fund balance. 2 is the total fund balance. 3 is operating deficits. 4 is your cash ratio. 5 would be your cash as a percentage of your gross monthly expenditures. And then the last is a change in the short-term cash flow debt issuance. So the example that's up on the screen here is not ConnectQuats, it's just an example that's been provided by the Comptroller's Office. So the most important number that can be assigned in any one of these categories is actually a 0, all right, because that's called no designation, all right, anywhere from 0 to 24.9. And then a district could be susceptible to fiscal stress as you start to get into the 25 points to 44.9. And then it goes up to moderate, and then it goes to significant stress. So how does this relate to ConnectQuat? So on this particular screen here, there are a lot of numbers, but what I did to the far right and about 2/3 of the way down is I just put a little blue circle around a number that's important to ConnectQuat. So in terms of fiscal stress, and out of the 6 indicators, okay, 2 of them happen to be important for ConnectQuat. One of them is actually number 3, which is the operating deficit. And back in 2023, we had a score of 0. 2024, we had a score of 0. And then in 2025, we had a score of 6.67. So that's still in the no designation category, but it's something to be careful of that trend. Going down to indicator number 6, which is short-term cash flow debt. We've gone from 0 in 2023 to a score of 3.33 in 2024. And now for the 2025, the last school year, we have a score of 10. So once again, another trend of an increasing score that's just something for us to be very aware of. The one that I circled is, it's the debt that we incur each school year, mainly in the beginning of the school year. We do what's called a tax anticipation note. So for those of you who own your own residence, you pay your real estate taxes, you typically pay those real estate taxes in December, maybe early January, and then you pay them again in May, and then maybe you'll pay, some people will pay them early June. However, our school year starts July 1. So when you think about it, we don't collect any tax receipts from the town of Islip until maybe the last week in December, the first week in January. So we have to survive financially from July 1 all the way until December with literally no cash from tax receipts. So what we do is we borrow what's called on a tax anticipation note. We borrow money in anticipation of those taxes coming in. So about midway in this screen, it's in gray to the right. Back in 2023, we borrowed $40 million, and this occurs roughly in September. 2024, we borrowed 42,500,000. And then for the last school year, we borrowed 47 million. So you can see that trend of us having to borrow more money. And then we typically pay it back, not typically, we do pay it back usually at the very end of June. But it's just a trend that the Comptroller's Office is monitoring, not just our district, but all districts. Anybody have a question on fiscal stress? All right, so let's move along here.
Question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Maybe I was trying to read through this while you were speaking, but why is it that we're now in that, like, line 3 operating deficits, we're at 6.67? Why is the trend going in this way where we were at 0 in 2023 for all those items? What's happening?
So that's a great question. So for the most part, I'm going to try to oversimplify this, okay? Let's say that the school district's budget is $200 million, all right? We expect, and I'm making this up, we expect to spend $200 million, okay? And how do we pay for that? Roughly 150 million of that is tax money that comes in, okay? And let's say 25 million is miscellaneous income that comes in, interest on bank accounts, fees that we might collect from programs and whatnot. So the other 25 million would come from our reserves, right? Money, and I'm going to get into that. There's a separate slide on that. So the reserves are individual buckets of money, and we say, okay, it looks like we're going to have to pull X amount of dollars from bucket A, bucket B, okay? What happens with an operating deficit is, in the past, we've never spent the 200 million, okay? We've come in at, say, 190, all right? So we've had what would be called an operating surplus. What's happening more and more as we're trimming expenses in every single one of those codes, when we provide that Excel spreadsheet and there's 10,000 lines in there, when we trim those codes each year more and more, it becomes more difficult to operate with a surplus at the end of the year because we've cut so close to where the numbers are. So that's what the state is really highlighting, is that the days of the district operating with this nice windfall of extra cash because we didn't spend it, it's not going in that direction so much in the last few years. So it's a little bit of a warning sign, as you build the budget, to just be careful how close you are to what you're spending versus what you're bringing in. Okay? You're welcome. All right, so here we are. This one is what's called fiscal stress, but it's also called environmental stress. So these are 6 different categories that the state monitors our district and all other school districts. So you can see item number 1 is the percentage of economically disadvantaged students. 2 is your student to teacher ratio. 3 would be your turnover rate of all teachers. 4 would be the percentage change in property value. 5 would be your budget vote approval percentage. And then 6 would be your percent of English language learners in the district, okay? And once again, the closer you are to 0, that's a better score. And as you start to climb, you get out of that no designation zone and into what the state calls a susceptible zone. So once again, on the far right, roughly in the middle of the page, I circled what our latest total designation is, which is a 10. And this is environmental, not so much what I was talking about with fiscal before. And as you can see, it's really just made up of one of the 6 components. It's item number 6, the percentage of English language learners. We've gone from 4% to 5% out of the population of students. And for that reason, our score went from a 5 to a 10. Item number 5, which is the budget vote approval percent, actually the score went down in our favor there. So you can see that the percentage of the community that actually approved the budget went from 68.21 all the way up to 72.36. So that's a positive rating there. Any questions on environmental stress?
What does the score, like, what does that mean, 5 to 10? What is they telling us
So
about our
if,
English language learners?
okay, so well, real quick, if you look at the bottom of the screen, it has 0 to 29.9, gives you what the designations are. But just focusing on that percent of English language learners, so I would imagine what the state is saying is, as the percentage of your student population increases with these ELL students, it may place more of a financial burden on the district. These students might require more services. So that's why they're looking at the percentage going up as a negative, not so much as a positive. Okay? You're welcome. Okay, so let's move along here. So this is going to be state aid, all right? So just last week, the governor revealed her proposed budget, all right, for the state. And as we've known in the past, that budget's not final until the state legislature, the Senate, and the Assembly actually adopt the budget, which is hopefully no later than March 1st, because the state starts their fiscal year April 1st. So we always like to see the state have a budget in place, and that obviously tells us what our state aid numbers are going to be like. So what this is, it's just breaking out the state aid into different categories. So up at the top on the left, you can see what are called, all the way up at the top, aid. That is the largest component of our state aid. And this is a proposed number. And if you carry it all the way over to the right, you can see that the governor is only proposing right now a 1% increase.
So Connecticut, like many of the school districts across the state, we would fall into that category of the guaranteed minimum of 1% that the governor is proposing. And the challenge with this is that, and Bob will probably speak to inflation, it doesn't match. Especially the trend over recent years, the inflation increases, even though inflation is getting, quote, better than the last several years, it still doesn't, meet that need. And obviously, the foundation aid is a key point of advocacy for all school districts.
Yes, great point. And in the past, not so much last year, but I'll say maybe 3 years ago, and even before that, we were getting a minimum. They call it the safe harbor provision, where we were getting a minimum of 3%. So here, we're starting off out of the gate with just a 1. We're hopeful that it could be 2%. I think 3% is very optimistic, but that's all the state is giving us in foundation aid, which is our largest component to help us pay for items in next year's budget. And we certainly know, although we haven't revealed it yet, the actual budget, that an item like health insurance alone could be an increase of 9%. So it's becoming a little more difficult to manage these budgets with such a small increase coming just in foundation aid. And then, as you can see, all the other different aid categories that make up state aid. So when we talk about state aid, it's really a misnomer to just refer to one item. It's made up of a multiple number of items here, and they fluctuate back and forth. So the items just below foundation aid up at the top, they're called expense-based aid. So really, the more money we spend, let's say on capital projects in the district, the more money we're entitled to in terms of building aid. Same thing with transportation. The more we spend to transport our students, the more we get back from the state and aid. And even the third one there is BOCES aid. Same thing. The more we spend on BOCES services, those services that are eligible for aid, we get aid back on them and down the line here. So even going all the way down to the very bottom, okay, when we look at total school aid and we carry that all the way over, right now we're seeing a decrease of 2.25%, and a lot of that is made up of the building aid category, which we're currently looking into. These are not the final numbers, but just trying to understand the significant increase in building aid. And also a little further down, you can see public high cost, excess cost aid. That's really students with special needs and students with significant services that they need. So we're looking into that number as well. Does anybody have a question on state aid or any of the individual components?
And Bob, in terms of those reimbursable categories, we are actively reviewing if the state is up to date, because sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. If you can just quickly speak to that.
Yeah. So, and then that's another great point. So when I talk about that line, public high cost, excess cost aid, sometimes the lag is the data that's actually transmitted up to the state. So that's a number that when the state runs the next database, which will be in February, we're hoping it captures more of our expenditures and will help us get more aid just in that category alone. Okay, moving along. So we're on to the tax cap here, and I'll try to make this a little quick. So everyone has heard of what's commonly referred to as the 2% tax cap. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's more, but I highlighted the two numbers that have come in from the Office of Real Property Tax Services. That number is at 1.0009, and the Office of the State Comptroller tells us the allowable levy growth factor, 1.02. So if you do higher mathematics, we're just a little bit over 2% out of the gate with the tax cap. But a little further down on the screen, actually the fourth bullet talks about the capital exclusion. So we are allowed to exclude certain numbers when we actually do our tax cap calculation. And for example, the monies that we pay out on our bonds, the principal and the interest we pay out on our bonds, we're allowed to exclude that because the voters have already previously approved the bonds. So when there's voter approval, that becomes an exclusion to the tax cap. So all of these different exclusions, and I think we have 6 of them up there, will help bring that tax cap to a number that's higher, much higher than 2%. So that's what we're working on right now, is what our actual tax cap is going to be. Any questions on the tax cap? Okay. So this slide is really what Dr. Centimore was referring to, which is about the Consumer Price Index, where that number has been coming in each year versus where the tax cap or the allowable growth factor number has been coming in. So as you can see, in the last few years, mainly from 2021 all the way to 2025, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, has considerably outpaced the tax cap number. So that CPI represents, the basket of goods that most of us tend to buy each day. So here we are trying to operate a school district, buying supplies for classrooms, paying for fuel, let's say for school buses. We're capped at this 2% number, and yet sometimes those numbers grossly exceed that. Okay, moving along here. So these are really tax revenues or property taxes paid by folks who live on Long Island versus the rest of New York State. And as you can see in green, about 73%, a little bit more of our property taxes that we pay. Only 26% of it actually comes back to us in the form of state aid. Whereas to the right of the screen, outside of Long Island, those people only tend to contribute about 57%, yet they get a considerable amount more of state aid, almost 43%. So there is quite an inequity here as to the amount of money Long Islanders and residents of Connecticut are paying in property taxes versus what our district's actually receiving in state aid. And I think this is one of the last slides we're going to talk about, which is our reserve and our fund balances here. So once again, lots of numbers, but if you look at the left side, and if you can imagine, each item is a bucket, okay? So workers' comp reserve. So we have, I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4 columns to the audited balance as of June 30th, 2025. So about a little more than 6 months ago, okay, we had $3,899,000 sitting literally in the bank account with workers' comp, and we're self-insured. So if an employee gets hurt on the job, a teacher gets hurt in the classroom, custodian gets hurt, anyone gets hurt on the job, and if they're awarded a workers' comp award, that they would come out of that reserve. So once again, carried over one more column, the amount applied to the 2025-26 budget. We are expecting to take $1,530,000 out of that bucket and to use it to pay for the current school district budget. Okay, if that actually happens, all right, if you carry it over to the very last column, we will be down to about $2,369,000 in that workers' comp reserve. So just using that line as an example, we have to be very careful with these reserves. Even though there's significant money sitting in each bucket, if we're going to use it, it's important that we have some type of a plan or some type of a way to replenish these reserves. Otherwise, they're just not sustainable.
So Bob, in terms of that last column with the 24 million, that's prior, obviously, to when the books close around the early fall, and whatever surplus when the budget is officially closed by the auditors, some of that money gets put back into designated reserves and fund balance.
Correct, exactly, yep. So, so once again, just on the left side, you can see all the different buckets from unemployment. If some employee ever leaves the district and they are deemed to be entitled to receive unemployment benefits, we're self-insured. So dollar for dollar, we have to pay those benefits. The third one is the employee retirement system, and those are employees who are all non-instructional, so non-administrators, non-teachers. Everyone would go into the ERS. We have the Teachers Retirement System Reserve. We have our own insurance reserve, the EBLAR, which is the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability. To keep it simple, for the most part, it's the value of all the employees' sick time, what their current value of their sick time, and what they would be paid out if they were to leave today. So that tends to be one of our largest reserves, just shy of $10 million sitting in there. All right, and then down to the capital reserve, repair, appropriated fund balance, unappropriated fund balance. And then that last one is the unassigned fund balance, which the state, if we can, they allow us to keep 4% in there. This year we fell a little bit lower, probably around 3.8% there. Okay.
Are we looking, do you think that we'll get back to that 4%?
That's what we hope. You know, right now, as we're going, say we're halfway through the school budget right now, and we're meeting with every building principal, we're meeting with every department chair, even in central office, and we're taking a look at every single building, every single department's budget, and we're monitoring where they are right now in terms of what they thought they were going to spend and what they have not spent. So we just issued a memo 2 weeks ago, and we told all the building principals, all the department administrators, that Friday, February 13th, which is the Friday before the February break, that's the deadline and that's the cutoff for issuing any new purchase orders. So if you haven't spent the money by February 13th, we're going to be very careful allowing any monies to be spent, because that's how we replenish these reserves, is watching that budget very carefully for the next few months towards the end of the year. So I'm optimistic we're going to try to get back up to that 4%. You know, that's, I call it the rainy day fund. You know, that's the fund where You never know if you're ever going to have to use it, but the state says you can only keep 4% in there.
How can we dip below that 4%? Like, I'm just trying to understand it in like layman's terms. Like,
Yeah, great
what happened
question.
that we dip below that?
Yep. So just that example I tried to give before with the $200 million budget, and let's say 150 comes from the state, all right, and then we're budgeting 25 million to come in other fees, interest on bank accounts. Just if I use that for example, like we did the current school year budget back in March, and we finalized it in April last year when interest rates were a little higher. Now they've come down. So the monies that we budgeted to get interest on our bank accounts is lower than we thought. So when you factor in all these budgeted numbers, monies coming in, if they don't materialize, all right, we don't finish the year with the surplus that we thought. And in that case, now when you take a look at all these different buckets of money, you have to figure out how much are we going to put back into each of these buckets. And sometimes the last bucket to get filled is that unassigned fund balance.
Also, this goes back to the state and state aid, and for school districts to receive adequate and sustainable funding from the state and not 1 to 2% increases.
Yeah.
Of foundation aid especially.
So, I'm sorry. So, and this is something that the state allows, so there's no, it's not like we're gonna get penalized that we were under the 4.
No. Matter of fact, you actually get the slap on the wrist when it goes over the 4. They don't want you hoarding the extra. Right. So, all right. Any questions on reserves and fund balance? Oh, I thought we made it, but we got one more slide here. So here's our, sorry, Marisol.
I love this, Bob. Keep going.
I know you do. So here's our debt, all right? And to try to keep this slide as simple as possible, on the far left, all right, are the current, are the different school years. So at the top, we have the current school year that we're in. And if you carry it over to that first column, where it has the $8,350,000 bond issue, so that's an older bond issue that only has what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe roughly 10 years, 9, 10 years left on it, and it'll be paid off. You go over to the next column, the EPC lease. So that's I'll say a lease that we did for a lot of solar equipment throughout the district. And once again, that was a $21 million lease or a bond, and you can see the different payments there. To the far, the next column over, the ban. So I talked about tax anticipation notes. This is a bond anticipation note. So a few years ago, the voters approved a $59 million bond. Right now, we're still in the process of completing all the individual projects. So as we need the money, we borrow the money short term as a bond anticipation note. And then when all the projects are complete, we'll bond the whole thing out. But in the meantime, we have to make principal and interest payments. So that that line that's in yellow, that $5,050,000, that's the amount that we're going to have to pay in principal and interest on that bond anticipation note. And then one more column over, that's our other outstanding bond that we have. So we technically have 4 outstanding bond issues, one being the lease issue.
Analyzing the debt service is important because what districts do is when they plan for big bond capital projects, they look at their debt service schedule, and generally you look for those years when you're starting to see large sums of debt coming off, quote, the books,
Right.
where you can start to consider and plan for future bond capital projects. So, the debt service coming off from the prior bond capital projects, and then if you get voter approval, you look to almost go dollar for dollar to kind of keep that budget line stable without it spiking.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and that's it. So any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have questions on the budget.
Sure.
So, I had emailed you in advance some of my questions. I know a lot of them require data. And you might not have all the answers, so that's okay. I'll just go through them, and what you have an answer for tonight, we'll do at the next meeting, the other ones you don't. So the first one, I made a spreadsheet, but this was not on the spreadsheet. I want to know which line incorporates the scholarship chip and the dollar amount.
Sure. So we do get scholarship from BOCES. That's a BOCES service that we get. It would I'll have to get back to you as to the exact account code that it comes in, but I believe the cost. I had the invoice earlier, was about $30,000. It's a little bit more than that, and I'll get you that information as well, the exact number for that scholarship.
The scholarship, I just want to make sure, because it's now come up in our last meeting when we were talking about goals and stuff. When I first got on the board, we did speak about this, and that we have another process that we can use instead of scholarship. So I want to make sure, are we looking into that avenue and what we're doing so we can, do away with this $30,000 cost? I don't need that answer now because I know it's something that has to be looked into, but I would like that looked into. Okay, I asked for a full breakdown of all BOCES charges, including an explanation of why we are utilizing BOCES for these services. So when you look at the budget, we have BOE BOCES, district meeting BOCES, ASB BOCES, purchasing BOCES, personnel BOCES, public relations BOCES, print and mailing BOCES, data processing BOCES, BOCES administration, curriculum BOCES, music BOCES. We have a lot of them. And several of them, we also have special ed BOCES, but I believe that covers probably our special ed students that actually go to BOCES. But all of these other charges, some of them are million, two of them are $1 million. They're 70,000, 150, 70,000. Why are we utilizing BOCES so much, and what are these for? And again, I know I asked for backup, so this could take longer, but I just find these charges to be pretty high.
Yeah. So in my hand right now is the latest BOCES invoice. It's from December of 2025. We subscribe to a total of 181 different BOCES services or programs. Okay. So when I say subscribe, it doesn't mean we're actually going to use every one of these, but they're on the menu, so to speak, as something we subscribe to. So the total value of all of these 181 services through BOCES, and I can get you this document, is $19,638,000. All right, that's the total value of all of them. I know that you had asked for a description.
Right, because I want to understand why we're not, printing, mailing, data, why aren't we doing this in-house versus paying BOCES to do some of these services for us?
Yeah.
I comprehend the special ed, but other ones I don't.
Right. So what I'm working on right now, based on your request, is putting a description next to each one of these 181 line items. So just to give you a better idea of what it represents. Some of them are, to me, not necessarily misleading, but it's difficult to figure out what they relate to.
Okay.
So, and I know you read off a few of them there, but
Yeah, I understand that's data and it's going to take
Yep.
time, so that's fine.
Yep.
My next one was that why is John Pearl's security, besides Cherokee, cost higher than any other elementary school when they are a smaller school compared to some of the other elementary schools in our district?
yes, so that's a good point, and I was actually looking at it earlier today. So the security guard, the unarmed security guard who's assigned to the John Pearl, it is the same gentleman each day. From time to time, there may be a substitute that covers for them. So that number should come in at around about $39,000, maybe $40,000 in total. Should be the actual expenditure. I was curious if you were looking at the budgeted amount, which was about 51.
I am looking at the budgeted amount. Yeah, it's 51,
exactly.
and I'm curious why we're budgeting so much for that versus
Right.
other schools that are, again, larger.
Yep. So it could be, and this is another one that I still have to do a little more research. It could have been that when we were doing the budget, it was a different individual assigned to that building at a different hourly rate versus this one, but I'll get you an answer as to why
Okay.
the budget was so high.
Thank you. My next question is around the instructional 1 to, I think, 1st to 3rd grade, the foreign language. I believe this is the push-in program for lunch. So we have Duffield, John Pearl, Cherokee, Idlehour, Sycamore, Boston, and Slocum. I'm just curious if is this an extra amount or is this taking off of? So if I make $10,000 a year,
Right.
and now I'm pushing into the school, am I making 15,000 a year, or am I making 10,000 still, and this is just a piece of my pie?
So it's a good question. It's a piece of, so it's not an extra amount
Okay.
for those individuals who are pushing into there.
So I have another question then. This push-in is actually optional, and its kids can come during their lunch period, correct?
Is that right? Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of monies here for this. One of my other questions is, if you look at Cherokee, our budget is 80,000, but if you look at Idlehour, again, one of our smaller attended schools, it's 81,000. And the rest of the schools, you know, well, Boston is 81,000. Why are some of them so much higher? And the other ones are in $30,000 and $40,000 range. That's a huge discrepancy there.
Do you know if is that schools?
Without the information before me, it likely has to do with the expense of the teacher themselves, right? This is a piece of their instructional duty for their instructional day. So if I'm earning a higher salary than, let's say, another teacher, right, and this is part of my day, that's probably the breakout that you're referring to here.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not 100% positive, but that's what it sounds
Do we
like to me.
keep attendance sheets for the push-ins? Like, it's lunch, so you come when you can. Is there attendance sheets for whoever?
As opted in, yes.
Okay, so if we could get those also at some point. My next question was around the co-curriculum stipends, and it says music, and it was 180,000. I just wanted to know what that covers and who that covers.
So, not sure. So that was one of your questions I didn't have an opportunity to get to today. So I will get you that information.
I also then asked about the coaching. Does this amount cover all coaches district-wide? If so, if I could have a breakdown by the sport and the coach, this came to 1.16 million, roundabout.
Yep.
I assume you didn't get to that one either because of my end
Correct,
questions. And then I asked, we have a $180,000 budget line for just overtime for bus drivers. And I was curious why it's so high and why are we needing as a district to pay the bus drivers this much overtime?
So that one I actually did get to. What I did here is I took from the beginning of the school year in July all the way through November 30th. I took the top 11 employees who are in the transportation unit, and I took their overtime that they earned. So I went payroll by payroll. And let me just give you an example, because most of them are bus drivers, okay? And it depends if they're a 7-hour guarantee versus a 6-hour or an 8-hour. But for the most part, and I'm just going to use this one example here. So if there's a bus driver who's guaranteed 7 hours each day, all right, we calculate overtime by day, not 7 times 5 days, which would be 35 hours. And when that person goes over the 40 hours, they get overtime. We don't do that. We calculate it by the day here. So for this particular employee who's a 7-hour, they often take work off of what's called the emergency wheel. So if a trip comes up or a driver's not available to do a run, that particular driver will take that route. And if it goes over 8 hours for the day, they will get overtime there. And also if they decide, if they take a trip, so any work that particular bus driver incurs that brings them over the 8 hours, they're entitled to overtime.
So let me ask you this. Is this a scheduling problem for the district? Because we're not scheduling to cover for these runs. Because I would
Yeah.
rather pay a regular rate than an overtime rate. And if we know we already have these runs, I'm trying to understand why.
Yeah.
180,000 is 180,000.
No, so a good question. So, in my hand right now is the absenteeism list just for today, with bus drivers. So when a day, using today as an example, when we've got a number of bus drivers who are absent and their routes have to be covered, we only have a fixed number of staff who are available. So if there's someone who's willing to take the work off the emergency wheel, we give it to our own drivers to do that, but they would be entitled to overtime. So, it can be a daily fluctuating situation that causes the overtime, but oftentimes it's trips and late runs. It could be a variety of things.
Okay. That was the last question on that sheet. I do have more to email you, but I didn't want to, I think I definitely gave you a lot here at one time. So I will email the other ones and, let you just continually work on getting the answers.
All right.
Thank you.
So, but I do have a question.
Go.
Okay, so we have been systematically denying the guaranteed 6 hours that contractually, we fixed this, but contractually they should have gotten, okay? We have been splitting up runs, half of them going to Suffolk, which we're in the process of fixing now. This went on forever. So I still don't really get the $180,000 of overtime, okay? Because we just started guaranteeing their 6 hours. And I'd like you to explain to me the difference between the guarantee, I think I know, but I'm not positive, between the guaranteed 6 hours versus the guaranteed 8 hours. So where, in fact, does a 7-hour guarantee fall in that?
Right, and this is contractual. So if we look at the transportation unit contract, it spells out the 6 hours, 7 hours. So, the drivers, 6, 7, and 8 are the three different categories of guarantees. So, in the beginning of just prior to the school year, by seniority, the drivers get to pick, all right, the bus route, the bus run that they would like, all right, and for the most part, there's a certain number of available 8-hour slots, a certain number of available 7-hour slots, and then you go down to the 6 hours. So that's really how it's assigned, based on the contract and the terms of the contract and the positions that are available. There's a few exceptions, all right? There could be someone with a 6-hour who, is a 19A, gets an extra 2 hours, added to their day, but for the most part.
Right, I understand what you're saying with that. My question is, okay, this past summer, the run was cut from 32 runs to 21 runs, okay? Unbeknownst to the Board of Ed and the residents, it occurred. It still isn't equating to $180,000 put aside for overtime. You see what I'm saying? Like there's something, there's an oddity there. They are guaranteed 6 hours contractually, okay? They're not running 6 hours because the runs were being split. So I don't have to explain to you, they were being hired to go to, let's say, basketball. They were driving our kids to basketball, but then Suffolk was hired to come and pick them up. We know this. So I'm again lost, Bob, on the $180,000 a lot allocated for overtime for transportation. So maybe you can give me a course sometime this week and explain it to me. Maybe it's my math. Maybe I don't know. I'm not. You
Sure.
understand? There are, but for me, there are significant discrepancies from the get-go with all of this. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hauser? Thank you, sir. Well done. I will now have Ms. Poppy do a presentation on the Portrait of a Graduate overview.
Thank you for providing me with an opportunity to share with the board and the public some updates that are coming from New York State, namely an overview of the state's Portrait of a Graduate. And wanted to kind of make clear that the Portrait of a Graduate is just part of a much larger plan by the State Education Department to transform education as we know it in the state. This is part of a larger plan called New York Inspires, that contains 4 major transformations. And as you can see, the first of which is the subject matter of this presentation this evening. It is to adopt the New York State Portrait of a Graduate. This was accomplished by our State Board of Regents in July 2025. Following that, the second transformation under this large umbrella plan of New York Inspires is to redefine credits and learning experiences as we know them and experience them right now, to sunset diploma assessment requirements, and finally to move to one New York State high school diploma, and that would begin with the class of 2033. So we're talking about a relatively short period of time during which the state will be experiencing and undergoing some pretty extensive revisions. Right now, we are in what the state is calling the installation phase of New York Inspires. It extends from this fall, 2025, through the summer of 2027. And we've already seen some movement in terms of what the state has sort of assured to the public will happen within this time frame. Again, the first is this portrait of a graduate, which is the subject matter of this presentation. There's going to be some further releases, which I'll speak about in a few moments, relative to rubrics and guidance that will be issued by the State Ed Department. The State Ed Department will be releasing some prioritized and reformatted learning standards with guidance for local school districts. The state will be requiring instruction in financial literacy and climate education that will begin as soon as next year in 26-27. And I'll dedicate some time this evening to speaking about those changes. The state will also release some further details on that new credit requirement, along with plans for cohort phase-in. So which students will be impacted by these changes and when those impacts are anticipated to occur. Finally, the state has committed to continuing their opportunities to gain and receive feedback from the public and its constituents at large through work groups and advisory panels. And they'll continue communication channels to disseminate and support changes to future diploma requirements. Those are the state's assurances that, hey, we're not operating in a vacuum, and we're going to involve local stakeholders, school districts, and certainly affected individuals in this changing process. So the Portrait of a Graduate, again, that cornerstone of New York Inspires, is, as defined by the state, providing a unifying vision of what it means to be a graduate in New York State and describing the essential skills and dispositions that all students should develop to be successful in college, careers, and civic life. The portrait features 6 interconnected attributes, which are all grounded in culturally responsive, sustaining education. Perhaps you've seen this wheel. If you have not yet, let me introduce it to you. This is the portrait of a graduate as defined by New York State. There's plenty of fine print in this image, so I would like to take an opportunity to speak with you a little more deeply about these 6 attributes which create the portrait, all under that sort of umbrella of culturally responsive, sustaining education. So under the portrait and within New York Inspires, we are, as a representative of the state, developing students who are academically prepared, who are creative innovators, who are critical thinkers, effective communicators, global citizens, and reflective and future focused. Every student, upon their graduation, will have had educational and academic experiences to prove that they have accomplished all 6 of these attributes. In addition to their credentialing requirements that are more of the traditional sense that you and I are used to considering. What coursework have you completed? How many credits have you earned? Which assessments have you taken? How have you proven your accomplishments? This represents sort of a second pathway that every student will have to participate in and define through their academic and extracurricular experiences that they have accomplished these particular attributes in order to be considered diploma worthy and ready. These are the state's definitions, and I will say that this work has really been the target and the objective of the board's curriculum committee. Unpacking the meaning of these different definitions, looking at what we think the state is meaning within these 6 attributes, and identifying how Connect-Quat's offerings already align to what the state is saying students will have to be able to do. So in the state's terms, to be academically prepared is a student who demonstrates a strong foundation in the New York State learning standards and is equipped with the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve success in college careers, civic engagement, service, and life. What we encounter is some questioning, I'll say, against what these attributes actually mean when the rubber hits the road. What are we expecting of students, and how are we requiring them to demonstrate that they are academically prepared and ready for that diploma? Second, the creative innovator attribute indicates that a student utilizes their imagination, curiosity, and flexible thinking to solve problems creatively and develop new ideas and products while adapting to evolving circumstances and challenges. Every one of our graduates will have to indicate that they've satisfied this attribute through their coursework, their activities, their experiences in high school. We're developing critical thinkers, students who analyze information thoughtfully, evaluate evidence critically, and identify patterns and connections between different pieces of information across multiple content areas to address complex issues and navigate the world with insight. We're developing effective communicators, students who articulate ideas clearly and confidently through speaking, writing, and the use of different types of media for various purposes while engaging with diverse audiences and actively listening to different perspectives. The 5th attribute is that of a global citizen. So our students are going to demonstrate that they are able to act responsibly and ethically within local, global, and digital communities, employing civic knowledge, skills, and mindsets to promote global sustainability and contribute positively to a culturally diverse democratic society. Finally, our future grads will prove that they are reflective and future-focused, that they engage in self-reflection to identify their strengths and areas for growth. They set meaningful goals, use social awareness to maintain supportive relationships, and demonstrate responsible decision-making that prioritizes social, emotional, and mental well-being. These are the tasks that are set before us by the state in their adoption of this portrait of a graduate. And the good news is that from what we've already seen and what we understand, there is a good deal of local control in terms of the means that we take in order to endeavor to accomplish these attributes, and eventually the other side of this pathway, the true credentialing toward a diploma. So local control is a good thing, but for us, that also represents a demand for strategic planning according to New York State guidance as it's delivered to us. And again, a lot of this work is going to form the ongoing focus of the curriculum committee. Thus far this school year, we've already dedicated 2 meetings to talking about these attributes, to exploring their definitions, and again, making some initial attempts to identify and align our existing coursework and our existing partnerships and our existing experiences that we offer to students to these attributes. Now a little more nitty-gritty, I'll call it. And we're looking at some of the instructional requirements that I mentioned earlier regarding personal finance and climate education. This is the latest update from the State Education Department, which was issued on Election Day on November 4th, 2025. So we just heard some very broad and far-reaching kind of qualitative components of this portrait of a graduate, but these are hard and fast requirements that the district will have to attest to providing for students, and along with a specific timeline for each, which is wonderful. We have a multi-year phase-in for local planning and alignment. There's that local piece again. And this is not set in stone just yet. We do anticipate that in March 2026, in a couple of months, the Board of Regents will go ahead and adopt these requirements. But this is essentially their planning session in terms of how these requirements will roll out. So students will have to have experiences in personal finance education in grades 5 through 12 next school year, and in grades K through 4 the following school year in 27-28. In terms of climate education, it will be required for students in grades 5 through 12 in 27-28, and for students in grades K through 4 in 28-29. The good news is that upon conversing with our directors of social studies and business and science, family and consumer sciences and technology, we are already offering these experiences to students across the board, K through 12. So we are in a preliminary positive position relative to these requirements. What we'll be awaiting is some more fine-tuning from the State Education Department. The state has provided for us a bit more information in terms of the topics that will need to be addressed relative to personal finance and climate education. So we are looking at the local implementation of developmentally appropriate embedded instruction or standalone coursework that includes these key topics in terms of personal finance: budgeting and money management, credit and debt management, earning income, risk management, and saving and investing. So topically, these will be subjects that are going to be addressed with our students in those particular grade bands starting next year. Ms. Parisi, you have a question?
5th through 12th?
5 through 12 starting next year, correct. K through 4 the following school year. There was a period of time when, through the curriculum committee, and actually a former Board of Education had requests that we insert coursework, required coursework in personal finance. And at that time, a few years ago, we had heard that the state would likely be making some statements about requirements and some changes that were coming down the pike. Well, here they are. The state has not required specific coursework, although we do offer specific coursework in personal finance. Rather, they're asking districts to ensure that every student has the opportunity to have educational experiences within these areas. In reference to climate education, again, we have that local piece where we're implementing developmentally appropriate embedded instruction or standalone coursework that includes these key topics relative to climate education: causes of climate change, impacts of climate change, and solutions for climate change. Relative to these two areas, what we are sort of awaiting from the State Education Department is its final adoption of the requirements in March of 2026. Upon that adoption, we're anticipating the release of specific grade band objectives. What I've just provided to you is what has been released thus far. We're anticipating some maybe prioritized standards, perhaps some prioritized areas that we could use in order to kind of leverage our current experience against what the state wants. And finally, some supportive resources such as question and answer sheets and dedicated websites to support the district in its movement toward assuring that we're offering these education types to students. It was a brief overview, but what I hope is that in the next couple of board meetings, you'll be hearing from our administrative staff relative to some of our coursework, our student accomplishments, our partnerships that we have already thriving in Connecticut, and you're able to kind of make the connections between what the state is offering as requirements for students and what we already have here thriving again in Connecticut. There's more work to be done. I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to participate on Connecticut's curriculum committee to our next meeting. It's February 3rd, Tuesday, February 3rd at 5 p.m. You can always email me if you'd like more information at cpoppy@ccsdli.org. If you're interested in joining this conversation, the more input and feedback that we have, I think the better in terms of really shaping out what Connecticut's portrait will look like.
I'm sorry, where is the meeting taking place?
Here in central office, thank you for asking.
I have a couple of questions.
So,
Sure.
Sorry.
Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to come to that meeting, but there's already 2 board members on the meeting.
I just want to go.
No, I think that, were you inviting the community?
The community,
Right.
sure. Right, it is a standing board committee, so I don't know if there's if you're an alternate, Ms. Parisi,
I'm not, I
sure.
just want to listen.
Okay.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, absolutely, go ahead.
So, this is a state mandate coming down that stuff, because it's all great in theory. I mean, I thought that's essentially what we're doing anyway, or trying to do with our kids, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. The state has sort of packaged it, and
They're making it a mandate. is
they
what
are
you're saying.
using the portrait as, I think of it as almost like a 2-lane highway for every student, right? So on one side you have the portrait and you have these 6 attributes that every student will have to accomplish. And then on the other side of that highway is all of the coursework, the requirements, whether it's assessment or whether it's portfolio assessment or whether it's opportunities for students to show their experiences to prove that they've had them. They both lead to one single diploma, which will be the standard moving
So
forward.
there'll be, this is where I'm a little confused. Will it be essentially electives that will go towards the amount of credits that our kids need to graduate? Is this what we're talking about?
It's a great question, and it's actually a question that was reflected in my conversations with our entire administrative team, right? So when we started talking about this, I gave an overview. I had less information than I have now, and they said, okay, great. How does student A make it to graduation then? What coursework do they have to take to prove these things in order to reach their requirement? And that is still to date unknown. We do anticipate that the state will be releasing more information shortly. Certainly, we're in that first installation phase through this summer of 2027, when the state has promised that they'll be providing updated guidance, updated learning standards, or prioritized learning standards.
25, 26, 26, 27. You see what I'm saying? So
Yes, things are starting already.
Okay, and just a couple things. When I was a kid, here in elementary school, they taught us, and part of it was getting at the time it was different, but a savings account, bank book. That was part of, I guess, they implemented it within the curriculum. Different now, but essentially the same as, if I'm not mistaken, of what you're talking about.
Right.
We were taught in elementary school how to fill out a check, things of that nature. I mean, are we going back to basics? Is that what they're saying? Or are they trying to dress this up? And I don't know. That's a genuine question. And in high school, we had business class. So that kind of answered to a lot of these. Mr. Nokar was great. Like, he taught us about charities and things. Everything that you're saying was what we had. So that's what I'm saying. Are we going back to basics? Is this?
I think that a lot of the experiences that we already offer, for example, through our existing business coursework and curricula that we have available to students, will satisfy much of the requirements, even within the attributes that I spoke about before, but certainly with the personal finance piece, we're going to have to ensure that every student has the ability to receive, even if they're not taking a business elective, which they already do. They're taking economics as a 12th grader. They all have an experience in personal finance in 9th grade through a dedicated day. It's a learning experience. According to what the state has released already, it seems that all of this will count, but we're just awaiting the fine details about what exactly the state is meant to see in our students.
One more question.
Of course.
When someone tells me climate change and it's going to be, that I find scary because it's subject to political opinions. How do we keep that out of the classroom? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many arguments I've had. I lived on the water my entire life. Not only is it not gone up, I'm pretty sure it's gone down a couple inches. So, see what I'm saying? Like, I that's my concern when it, like, how is that being mandated? How is that, do you know what I mean?
I think those topics are, by and large, already sort of addressed in our earth science courses, our earth and space sciences courses, right? So, again, it may just be ensuring that every student has access to them. Not every student is taking earth and space sciences, so that's on the district to ensure that there's exposure there. But it's
Only
already
because you said mandate, essentially it was mandate, so that's my concern.
correct.
Will the state be saying these kids have to take specific classes?
No, I think it's just that they'll have an educational experience, not that they have to take specific coursework, right? And that's part of the win for us locally, because we can make a local determination. Well, they had this experience as part of this course,
Okay.
right? Or in sum and substance, by taking this course dedicated to personal finance,
Right.
or climate change, or whatever the case may be, so it checks a box. But the state has been very clear in stating that it's not required coursework, it's required educational experiences.
So it kind of sounds like they're dancing around things, saying we have to do this, saying I could be wrong. Am I wrong? I don't know. That's what it seems like to me. It seems like they're saying it has to be done, but
Yeah, we're waiting for further guidance, and like we always guide our educators and our leadership, is to be apolitical, do the internal quality control. So I see your point when it comes to things like climate control. And getting back to your point about finance and back to basics, Ms. Poppy and I were visiting was it second grade today? We were visiting a second grade classroom today, and the teacher was doing currency, dollar bills, dollars and cents, old school stuff, basic stuff. And we saw it firsthand in an elementary classroom today.
Okay, so I'm, looking at all this, and I'm going to go back to something that I brought up many years ago with the district. Something that I think doesn't belong here, and that's culturally responsive sustaining education. I have looked deeply into this multiple times. I've done my own presentations for organizations prior to being a board member on this particular topic, because it is essentially nothing but politics. And I know we are waiting for the state to tell us where they want to go with this. I'll tell you in short, they want us to just follow whatever their liberal agenda is. That's ultimately what it is, because when you go back, and I see this, the statement that's on slide 4, when you go into the actual culturally responsive sustaining framework from the New York State Education Department, it is nothing except promoting just affirmation of identities, and it is not. I'll tell you something. I'm going to read this right from their website. Culturally responsive sustaining education is grounded in a cultural view of learning and human development in which multiple expressions of diversity are recognized and regarded as assets for teaching and learning. It explores the relationship between historical and contemporary conditions of inequality and ideas that shape access, participation, and outcomes for all learners. The goal of the CRS framework is to help educators design and implement a student-centered learning environment that affirms racial and cultural identities and fosters positive academic outcomes, develops students' abilities to connect across cultures, empowers students as agents of change. While I am all for students speaking up for themselves, I'm not here to create political activists. That's not what I want to do. And ultimately, this definition was created by a committee of people, including David Kirkland and Gloria Ladson Billings. Gloria Ladson Billings is essentially known as the mother of critical race theory, okay, where she has written multiple articles that race continues to be significant in the United States. Critical race theory was something that was originally developed colleges, universities. It is they are trying to constantly bring it into our schools, and everybody deserves an education. Everybody. I don't care what color you are, how many arms you have, how many. I don't care. You deserve an education. It is, but for us to go into this, I am concerned about the mandate of this because I want our children to learn math. I want our children to learn their science. I want them to know how to read and write, do cursive. That's important. I want them to learn history, real history, not something that's been twisted to fit any kind of agenda. This essentially, to me, is politics, finding a way to code it all in Portrait of a Graduate, make it nice and neat and packaged, and here we go, we're going to make you incorporate CRS into your academics. So I have deep concerns about this, that I want to remain apolitical. This, to me, is nothing but another way to try to insert this into to make our students become political activists. I don't agree with that. I want them to learn. So I have a lot of issues with this, with how they wind this in, and they want it to be a culturally responsive, sustaining education. I know exactly what that is, and I don't agree with that type of education. And then, of course, the climate change. I mean, that's all extremely political. So I don't know where we're going to go with this, but I'm honestly, I want all of our students to graduate, but I want them to graduate learning academics. Not they got their degree because they attended a protest. They did. I'm not even saying that that's specifically what it is, but that's not what this is about. We are here to teach children how to think, not what to think. And I do feel like this is the first steps of crossing that line. In my opinion, and I speak only for myself, I want to be very careful with how we go about doing this because I don't want politics to stay out of our schools. Out. That's it.
Thank you for raising those concerns. And I'm going to go back to what I shared during the presentation. The real highlight here is that there is a local control, right? There's a local element, and there'll be oversight, there'll be purposeful and thoughtful dialogue about requirements as they come. I'm happy to share things with the board along the way, if that's what the board prefers, as things sort of develop, and share that feedback along the way. But that local control for local implementation is, I hope, going to provide some solace in terms of what level of flexibility and control we will have as a district over what we're providing to students.
When you say local control, are you speaking the schools individually, each district? Is that what you mean by local control? We're
Correct.
not talking about state versus federal. We're talking local control.
Local school district-based
individual
control.
districts.
Correct.
Okay.
Can somebody just clarify? I don't think I understand what it means. What she was saying about culturally responsive education was. I don't. I guess I maybe am misunderstanding what that
Do
means.
you want to give from your perspective? As an educator, or what I'm seeing in front of me from your
I
state
just want to say,
education
Michael,
board?
everybody has a different opinion on what that means, and Jackie was giving us her opinion on how she felt what it means. You might think it means something different. Christina might think it means something different. So it's up for interpretation, is what everyone's saying.
No. What does
Not-
the term mean?
Yeah, it's actually not
Just
really.
the term. Like, what does the term mean?
The term is culturally, it's like a tongue twister. Culturally let me go back to it. Culturally responsive sustaining education. And it's not really up for interpretation when it's literally black and white right on a New York State Education Department document. This is from them. So what I was reading is not an interpretation. You may not think I don't like it. You may like it, and that's up for opinion, but what I was reading about the definitions and who created it, such as Gloria Ladson-Billings, that's not opinion, that's fact. She is the one who created it, and she is the one who is kind of known as the mother of critical race theory. That's what it is. Now, everybody can agree with it, disagree with it. That is absolutely your opinion. You can, that's up to you. I don't like it, and I don't want to see that. And the local control piece does, I want to make sure that we have that, that we are absolutely watching this to make sure, because these are my concerns. So just to give you definition, that's what the term is. Yeah, it's a tongue twister term.
Michael, I have a bit of an abridged version also. Mrs. DiLorenzo did provide, the larger context of what it is according to the State Education Department, but in reference to the portrait itself, a New York State high school graduate who is culturally responsive builds strong, respectful relationships, valuing diverse perspectives as essential to a rigorous, inclusive learning community. Right, so there is some qualitative subjectivity here in terms of what that means. As it was mentioned, it probably means something different to each one of us around the dais and every person in the room. And so that's part of the piece of defining what these experiences should look like in Connecticut for students, including or inclusive of this lens, right? And so the state initially in their sort of prototype for the portrait had this as a seventh attribute. So initially it was standing on its own as another sort of concept that students would have to prove that they've accomplished. And in July, the Board of Regents moved to make this sort of the underlying guidance of all 6 of those attributes. So they're saying that cultural responsiveness, that building of strong, respectful relationships, valuing diverse perspectives as essential to a rigorous, inclusive learning community is going to filter out into those 6 areas. But how that happens is up to us, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I have a question and then statement. First question, my understanding, I remember from the curriculum committee meeting, I was the alternate, that eventually the idea is to phase out the Regents exams being a requirement for a diploma, correct? So like they will, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, my understanding is still required to take the Regents, just not required to pass the Regents to get a diploma.
So there's more information that should be coming down the pike regarding Regents assessments. The only assurance that we've been provided is that they are not necessarily going away. Prior to COVID, there was a lot of conversation amongst State Education Department and its local outlets about abolishing Regents exams and completely eliminating them from a student's experience. The State Education Department has sort of done a 180 on that concept and said, no, they're here to stay, but every student may not have to participate in a Regents exam, sit for a Regents exam in order to prove their learning credential in specific areas. So for instance, if I'm taking a course in robotics, right, and part of my requirement toward graduation involves engineering, if I'm able to, and mathematics as part of that umbrella, if I'm able to demonstrate that I've successfully passed that course through whatever means have been designated by that course, it may count for instance, a math credit that I would otherwise have to take in a more traditional form, right? So I almost think of like a college catalog, right? You have to accrue core credits in these different subject areas. What you pick and choose is going to be based upon your interests, right? And then students are going to be making their way toward those requirements for graduation, which are still a relative unknown.
So my next question might also be a little bit of an unknown. I'm thinking of, we have, as it stands right now, a Regents, an advanced Regents diploma. I'm thinking of the local diploma, I believe it is, for students with disabilities or things like that. Is this going, if we're eliminating all these different diploma designations and just making it one, is this going to make it more difficult for those who may have been struggling? Like, what is going to be the
don't think
offset
so.
there, like, to make sure?
That is not the intent, and Dr. Senamore's kind of saying that without his microphone on.
The intent.
That's not the intent of this work. The intent is to create a New York State diploma, so every student has accomplished their own pathway toward graduation, right? It's differentiating through a single document rather than providing these differentiated outcomes for students. We often think about how this could look. We think about like different seals or credentials that students will accrue and how they'll appear on a diploma. We wonder if diplomas will have multiple seals moving forward to show what a student has done and accomplished as kind of, aside from their transcript, as kind of their coursework toward that accomplishment. But that remains to be seen.
Okay, so there can be unique pathways to one diploma.
Correct.
Okay, it's just like the way it reads is almost like, here's how you get a diploma in New
This
York
one,
now.
it's
and
not that,
good luck.
right?
And then just, I think we have done a relatively good job. Just to reiterate, I don't think we've the CRT, the conversations come up a lot. Nobody wants all of that in. It's a college level idea that nobody wants in there. I just wanted to say I think we have done a good job up to this point of making things our own. And I just think of like, I took a class called Natural Disasters, I believe it was called at the time, right? Like, it's still, I don't know if it's still called that, but like the ways I'm just trying to think of some of the things that we already have that can hit a lot of these, they can play into a lot of what sounds like these benchmarks while it's still addressing something like climate. So I'm wondering I'm guessing more to be revealed still, but have they given us any criteria of what hits what one of these categories yet? And when can we be expecting that if they want this implemented?
That's what we're so hungry for at this point, sort of the playbook in terms of like how to reach that
Okay, so
diploma requirement. More to be revealed. We're assuming shortly, right? Certainly we'll certainly have more information by the end of this installation phase than we have currently, but that's really up to the state in terms of what they churn out to the public. So I will provide updates. I'm happy again to provide the feedback from the curriculum committee along the way to see kind of how we're handling them or what the thoughts are around these different requirements from the state. And I'll provide all of those updates for the board and the public.
So you have a fun job right now. More to be revealed.
More to be revealed.
So at the last public meeting, I made a point to say, I'd like to see things less complicated for our kids, okay? Not another fad coming in where our teachers have to go out and start, be at LRM, and have to start all the way back at A. So I want to see if this is yet another mandate coming down the pike that our kids and our families have to then again adjust because something else is more difficult. And as far as the regions go, I'm not sure. When a kid say a kid fails his quarters, but passes the regents, does he pass the course?
Well, he has to still earn credit for the course because the credit is accruing toward that child's graduation transcript.
My
right?
point is, and I don't know if it's this way anymore. When my son was here, when I was here, if you took a regents class, okay, and you failed all 4 quarters, hypothetically, yet you passed the regents, you pass the course and your kind of your regent's grade is what stood for you. Is it still that way?
It is not that way.
So it's more difficult for a kid. Let's say a kid doesn't do well during the year, but really studies, really works the last month. They pass that regents, okay? That means nothing?
It does mean something because
What does it mean?
it's likely that regents is contributing to their current diploma pathway, right?
Right.
So they've accomplished that exam, which is a non-negotiable, right? However, they also need to pass the coursework in order to demonstrate their merit. And I know what you're talking about. In some districts on Long Island, that is the way, where
I'm sorry. So this is by district determines
that is my understanding. And here our requirement is that students complete and pass the coursework as well as the required regents exam, so long as the exam is contributing to their diploma requirement.
What's the point of taking a regents really if it's counted the same way a non-regents exam is for the course?
A final exam, you mean?
Yeah, like as if it were just a final exam.
So we're not offering both in courses. And I'm thinking about, let's just say Algebra 1. A student wouldn't elect to take in a traditional Algebra 1 course. They wouldn't elect to take a final or a regents exam. They're preparing all year for that regents exam because it's a graduation requirement, right? So, and then they're passing the coursework as well. So
they might not get the credit, is what you're saying.
they will have other opportunities to make up that credit.
Don't see, okay, I would like a definitive answer in a regents class, in a regents course, okay? If they do not pass the quarters, and yet they, let's say, get a 93 on our earth science regents, do they pass the course?
No.
Okay.
If they're failing. Now, and remember that the regents here does factor into the course grade. It's a minimal number, it's 8.4%. That's also not standard in every local school district. Some school districts elect to have the regent score sitting outside of the student's course average.
So this is district to district. This district chose not to.
This is the pathway that this district has.
Gotcha.
Since I've been here, certainly, it has been the way
How long have you
for
been
this
here?
district. This is my 11th year here.
Okay.
Okay, so, and I actually, I understand exactly what Melissa was saying about the different types of degrees, because you don't want somebody to fall short. So, again, I have to, I guess, reiterate, I don't want it to be that these, this cultural responsive learning framework is what distinguishes a student. There has to be academics involved. I'm just going to put that out there. I don't want it to be who advocated more, who did. It has to be based on academics. And I know you mentioned SEALs and different pathways that they have. I do know there's the SEAL of civic readiness, which looks nice, but again, we have to be very careful. Part of it is to demonstrate that a student has completed an action project in civics or social justice. And I just have concerns about this with these far left-wing ideas being incorporated and nicely packaged up in a version of a SEAL. So that quality control has to exist. And I actually also very much appreciate even what Melissa said about that we don't want critical race theory here. Absolutely, we don't want that in here. It is meant for college level. So I am hopeful that when we see it as a board, if we all agree that if it does find a way to try to leak in, we can keep it out, because it's not meant for here. It's not for our students. It's college level at that point. Students are here to learn academics, real history. That's it.
Just one more thing. I want to explain something because this is so profoundly disturbing to me. One of my children, struggled through algebra, a month and a half before the test. I'm going to say every day to every other day, okay, was going to a tutor. We're paying for the tutor. Tried to do extra help, didn't work, hence the really kind of in-depth and individual. And that's why I'm having a problem, because kids really do sometimes pull it out.
I know.
Okay? And doing that, they shouldn't be punished for that. So that's my thought process on that.
I can absolutely appreciate it. You didn't have to provide the background, but I certainly understand. And you know what? In the grand context, I'm sure you're not alone, right? Students have different types of experiences. Sometimes it's really a case-by-case basis. So does what you're describing happen? Yes. Yes.
This isn't trying to be like a political thing. I don't think that social justice is like an exclusively extreme left wing thing. I think social justice is something that like everybody can, anybody of any point on the political spectrum can see something in society that they don't think is right and they think is unjust. And I see that as a part of a well-rounded education in the same way that history or English or math or all that stuff would be a part of a well-rounded education for a student. So I don't really think it's like a bad thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I will say one thing, as being part of the curriculum committee, the portrait of a graduate has been both challenging and rewarding because of the lack of direction from the state. So they do give us a lot of leeway in allowing us to decide how we see what they're trying to implement works for our students. So I do appreciate the ability for the district to implement as they see fit for our district and our students. And Michael, to your point, I do agree. My daughter got the Seal of Civic Readiness, and she got to present on a topic that she believes in, and it wasn't given to her, the viewpoint wasn't given to her, it was just like her viewpoint and just how she views society and how she viewed that point that she was presenting on. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. And Jackie, I think that we all can agree, nobody wants to bring politics into our district. We all want to remain apolitical in our learning for our children. So that's the only thing I wanted to say for it. Sarah, did you?
Yeah, I think it should be completely apolitical all the way down the line, because not everybody is a straight A student right up there. Not everybody can differentiate and understand the difference. And that's the danger behind bringing anything political in. I think it should be apolitical, and if you get to a certain age, and fine. But I definitely don't think it should be in our public schools. It should just be apolitical, teaching our kids a little bit back to basics. Just my opinion.
And one last thing, and I swear that'll be done after this. I do want to. I don't want to, not acknowledge the fact that we can create our own. That we're doing that. I do, because, and I know that when the district is put to that task, I've seen it happen. It happened when Rula was trying to come in, and we directed our student services to create, with our incredible social work team, create your own initiative that is good for Connecticut, and we did exactly that with Easel. So I don't have doubts that we can, because I've seen it happen and be done very well. So I don't want to just discount that we, because I do think we should be doing that, taking this and making it our own. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Poppy. Appreciate it. Mr. Ibrahim, you have a student update?
Yes.
Excellent.
So I was not here at the last, before the special meeting, the previous. Did you guys talk about senior trip at all, or what happened?
We were waiting for you.
Okay.
Do it.
So, I don't know if you guys heard, there was a bus crash. I was on the bus that crashed. I was wearing my seatbelt. I was all right. I have a couple friends who I think suffered concussions and stuff of that nature. It wasn't too terrible of a crash, but it was a little alarming. But the trip was awesome. We went to Woodlock. It was a really great time. The facilities were great. The staff was great. Everything was awesome. 10 out of 10. I think it's a great spot to go back to for future senior trips. Very enjoyable. Aside from that, I wanted to Mrs. Ianatelli reminded me, the engineering club that you guys helped me start last year. It's been going wonderfully. We have, I think, 40-something different, unique student members. Regular attendance has been good, always between, usually 10, 20 plus people. It's always great. The meetings have gone very well. Obviously, with any club, you have a couple kids who are there just to, put it on their resume, whatever. But there's a lot of kids, and it's really nice to see there's a lot of kids who are doing the activities, and it seems like they're really getting things out of it. And we've gone through a couple different disciplines of engineering, and everybody seems really interested. So I'm very happy about that. It's been wonderful. Beyond that, another thing that's upcoming soon, I'm a member of the Model UN club, and we're hosting our Model UN conference. We do it every year. It's always a huge turnout. I think we're supposed to have, close to I want to say 200 people. I could be making that number up, but it's a lot of people coming for this conference. It's going to be awesome. So I'm very excited for that. And then midterms week also just passed. I know for me personally, my midterms went well. Physics was a little hard, but everything was overall pretty good. And yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Michael. I will now open the floor for the first open public comment portion of the agenda. I will call individuals forward one at a time. Please wait for my acknowledgement before stepping up to the podium. You should have received a number card from security on your way in. If you have not, please see a security guard in the back of the room. Any person wishing to address the board shall address the board president. Comments shall be kept as brief as possible and relate to school matters only. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes for one or more topics. Individual employees, parents, or children should not be identified by name, title, position, grade, or building. The use of foul language and threatening comments will not be tolerated, and the board will consider a recess until order is restored. In accordance with Policy 1230, public comment will not exceed 30 minutes. If there are additional persons wishing to speak, the board may consider a motion to extend the time. Number 1.
I'm here tonight because trust in the board has been broken. First muting me while talking at the last board meeting. Now, I warned you in May this would happen, so did attorneys, and you refused to listen about the mascot. The issue before us is not just a mascot, it's not just a name or a logo, it's the process, and whether the board believes it's accountable to the community it serves, or whether decisions can be made behind closed doors and justified after the fact. According to federal findings, Connecticut was found to be in violation of federal civil rights requirements in the way the mascot change was handled. Let that sink in. A public school district funded by taxpayers and trusted with our children was found to have crossed the line serious enough to draw federal intervention. You refused to listen to directives from the President of the United States, Trump, and Mrs. McMahon. That doesn't happen because of a typo. It doesn't happen because of miscommunication. It happens when transparency from this Board of Ed is abandoned. Instead of open communication, public process was abandoned. This board chose a backdoor approach. Instead of engaging the community honestly, following the survey that they put out, you instead worked through quiet coordination with New York State to push through a change from Thunderbirds to T-Birds that you knew would never survive full public scrutiny. You saw a survey you sent to this community come back with more than 60% wanted to continue the fight to keep Thunderbirds. Thank you, Jackie D, and thank you, Sarah, because you two held the line. Changing a mascot by slightly altering the name while claiming compliance is not leadership, it's legal maneuvering. And when that maneuvering triggers a federal civil rights finding, it's not embarrassing, it's disqualifying. This board didn't just change a mascot, you changed the rules, you changed the process, and you did it without the informed consent of the people you supposedly represent. Parents, students, alumni, and taxpayers deserved open hearings, they deserved clear explanations, they deserved honesty, and following the survey you yourselves put out. Instead, they got silence, spin, and a deal made in the shadows. So tonight, the question isn't whether people agree on a mascot. The question is whether this board believes the community matters. Because if the decisions of this magnitude can be made without transparency, if federal law has to step in just to force accountability to this board, then the real problem isn't a symbol on a jersey. The real problem is governance. This board owes the community more than vague statements and technical justifications. You owe us a full explanation. You owe us the documents. You owe us accountability. And until that happens, every decision you make will be viewed through the same lens. What else is being decided behind closed doors? Now CRT? April, you seem okay for CRT tonight. Will you guys ever push back on the state since you were the driving force to make a deal with the state and now are costing Connecticut more money? Or will you continue to take a knee and go along to get along, essentially hurting our children and community as a whole? Isn't it true last board meeting, April tried to hide 36,000 plus uniform budget transfer? Thank you, Jackie D. and Marisol, for setting this record straight and giving transparency on that. Correcting April's attempt to hide the cost to change the Thunderbirds continues to go up and up. And let's not forget that this is the same Board of Ed trying to make a backdoor deal with an administrator, the woman that shall not be named, to either force her termination or force her to request a dual agreement, which is totally unacceptable since she has earned her tenure, and this is just another example of your backdoor deals that lead to more corruption.
Thank you. Number 2.
I just wanted to add to something we were saying before about the
Sorry, I turned your mic off on accident. If you could turn it back on. Just bring it closer to you so the people at home can hear.
Okay.
Thanks.
When we were saying before about the 181,000 for the overtime for the transportation, something that's always struck me a little different about the transportation department, when you think of things like how we have eliminated directors of different departments and things, but yet if you ever walked into transportation, they have more head honchos like sitting in those chairs than I think any other department in Connecticut. I don't know what the reason is for that. I've understood what one of them hands out the daily routes, one maybe hands out keys or something, I don't know. But those people are all drivers. So maybe, they need to, in a pinch, when you're saying on a certain day when there's a certain amount of absenteeism as far as the bus drivers, those people need to jump in and take a route after they hand out their keys in the morning. It can account for a lot of the overtime, I think. It's to me, in my opinion, always been a top-heavy department, shall we say. So maybe that's something that could be looked at.
Thank you.
Sure.
Number 3? Nope. Okay. Can I call for a motion and a second to approve the instructional personnel items as presented?
Motion.
Second.
And do we have some questions on that?
So are we talking?
Yep.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Simple question. On a couple of them, the top 3 with the driver ed, it says 2 courses, driver education, 4 courses, driver education, 2 courses. Then it says 18 per course, 3 installments. Could you just, I think I know what it is, but could you explain that to me? That and as I said, it's like
Ms.
one of
Parisi,
them.
I'm sorry, where are you looking?
So 3 to 6. Instructional.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to look more into this.
Split it. I asked this question last year, the same question, and the different stipends for the what do you call it? People, they split it.
The
So one does
instructors.
one thing and one does another. It's Cheryl Sosa. Who's on here?
It kind of distinctly says 2 courses, and then the next one says 4 courses, and then another one says 2 courses, and then one just says driver education. Okay, and they're all, but the thing that's odd to me is they're all based in Spring. Okay, and it's saying 1,800 per course, 3 installments. It just doesn't make sense to me.
That's a fair point. I'm really gonna have to look into this. I apologize.
So then can we pull that for the next?
We can table those 3 items.
Okay, it's actually 4.
You want to table the administrator also?
Listen, I don't want to not pay these people clearly. I just want to understand what it is. It makes no sense.
So the administrator on number 6, that's just one installment just to be the administrator and to run the program?
Well,
Right. That's correct.
Well, right, but it still doesn't make sense to me that these other people, if
Right, so
he's
do
the
you want to
administrator,
do you want to table 3, 4, and 5?
I'd like to table 3, 4, 5, and 6 until it's completely
Got it.
explained to me.
I don't know if it's,
I will have that explanation to you by the end of the week.
I don't know if it's helpful leading up to it. I vaguely remember the conversation, and my understanding of it was if they're getting 1,800 per course, we know how many, just whatever that final dollar amount is split into 3 payments.
Right, so,
Across
but
3
my
checks,
question
I
is,
think
they're all in spring. So can you actually have 4 courses in spring? Do you see what I'm saying?
Or is it
I
by
don't know.
class? Like,
Is it
You- do you
is
know
a
what I mean?
class considered a course?
Yeah, I don't.
Yes.
Okay, but can we wait till we have a definitive answer? Because if the head honcho is saying to me he doesn't really know, let's wait till he does and he can explain it. That's all.
Sure, we can table them. Is everybody in favor of tabling those items?
Fine.
Okay, so can I call for a motion and a second to approve the instructional personnel items 1, 2, 7 through 12 as amended?
Motion.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I call for a motion and a second to approve the non-instructional personnel items 1, 2, 3, 5 through 20 as amended?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you pull that
I
one that I
pulled
asked you?
one. Mhm.
Okay.
That's why I said the numbers
I-
individually.
That's what I thought. I gave it to you, so I.
Yep. Are you an aye for the other ones?
Yes.
Can I have a motion and a second to approve item number 4 of the non-instructional personnel?
Motion.
Second.
Ms. Iannatelli, how do you vote?
I'm a yes.
Ms. Torregrosa?
Yes.
Ms. DiLorenzo?
I'm actually going to abstain because I don't know what this is about at all. I don't know if I'm missing something. I have to go back, and I don't want to make. I'm going to abstain. I want to make sure that I have information.
Okay. And Ms. Parisi?
And I gotta clarify this, as I said, because I handed my paperwork to you. Which one is this?
You want it back? This is the senior office assistant of the transportation department.
I'm a no until I have information on it. Sorry.
That's okay. And I am a yes. Motion passes. Can I have a motion and a second to approve items 2 through 11 of the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Actually, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. Can I have a motion to approve items 2, 3, and 5 through 11 of the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions on those items?
Yeah, just a quick question on the budget transfers. Just if you could explain, I see they're all going into a shortfall for the BOCES code for the remainder of the school year. Can just an explanation as to? I mean, I'm imagining they're coming from different places because we don't want to take 50,000 from one spot, so you kind of split it up. But what happened with this shortfall in the BOCES code?
I'll take it because they're curriculum items. So yes, you're correct. It's just taking a little bit from each one of those codes to be responsible and leave monies within those codes. It is to cover BOCES. The transfer itself is to cover BOCES costs and expenses. Annually, we do our best to imagine what the expenses to BOCES will look like. We have extensive planning. We look at our past practices, our past purchases, but sometimes the numbers just exceed what we've planned for. And that has been typical out of the Office of Curriculum and Instruction for quite some time. We have done a lot of work to narrow down our expenditures within BOCES and to get a better handle on it. So I feel that we've made quite a bit of progress, but there are still some costs that are needing to. We need to have the assurance that we'll be able to cover them for the remainder of the year, and that's the reason for the transfer.
Okay, thank you.
Rather than do piecemeal, we're trying to do it in one fell swoop.
Okay.
So my question would be, could someone explain textbooks? I have a senior, I have an 8th grader, and they don't have one textbook, nor has my 8th grader had one since elementary school. And I want to say, I don't even think she had them then. and it says transfer funds to cover the anticipated shortfall. So are we simply kind of putting money in a line item that we're gonna borrow from down the road? Because quite frankly,
Not necessarily, I'll say,
but it
because,
says textbook.
so textbooks relates to a lot of different things these days. Once upon a time, yes, it did relate to the textbooks that I knew in classrooms, and probably many of us sitting at the dais, minus Michael, know as textbooks, right?
I've gotten several textbooks over the past couple of years for my class.
There are some classes that still do utilize textbooks. They leave them in the-
$30,000 worth?
They leave them in the classroom though, right?
No, I have them at my house.
Oh, okay, because I know my kids, some of them left them in the classroom, some of them brought them home.
But textbook also encompasses elementary purchases. So it's not necessarily just a secondary conversation. We've done a lot of.
You just brought up
Sure.
elementary purchases.
Sure.
The sum of money that elementary students do at the beginning of the year to get their notebooks in there is off the charts. So I don't even understand that.
Okay.
If if we can get some sort of definitive answer, because textbooks isn't flying for me. Okay.
I have a budget breakout of
Okay.
what textbooks encompasses annually.
Okay.
It's part of Mr. Hauser's budget cycle. I have to speak to what is contained within
Right.
that code and what we're planning for. I can certainly provide that to you. That's
Trying
not
to
an issue.
avoid money going into a line item and being taken out down the road for some unforeseeable issue that we don't know anything about, quite frankly. So if we could get an explanation, because we really are buying textbooks. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. And I will add that though that code encompasses mostly middle and elementary school book needs for classrooms. Our building leadership, aside from the high school, has minimal book budgeting, and most of those purchases occur through my office. So it is, yeah, I just want to kind of provide a little bit of a landscape to enhance understanding around the table, but I'll provide you with the breakouts.
Hundreds of dollars I'm paying for my middle school student and my high school student. So again, I just am trying to alleviate any issue of money being parked somewhere, right? And then being taken out for something else that we don't know anything about. Not you, anyone doing it. Do you see what I'm saying? And I just don't understand textbooks. So if I could find out, great.
No problem.
Yeah, to your point, and not even just this, but just a question, do we keep a running track of how the line items that we keep taking from, to your point, to keep refilling, like, do we,
No, we don't.
you know, to see if we keep taking from this one, so let's budget it better, like.
Internally, my office does that, yes.
Okay,
And that's
okay.
part of the tightening up that I referenced, right? So we look at our expenditures, we look at the things that we've invested in, we look at unanticipated needs, right, which we do have every year, and we
Kind of fund
try,
balance stuff, though.
we try to do the best that we can to ensure that we have enough to cover. And so that's part of our internal process in terms of tightening things up and sharpening things up relative to that BOCES code. I can provide the BOCES breakout for you as well for my department. I think that was already requested, though, as part of a larger request for BOCES from Mrs. Iannatelli.
Any other questions on those items? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I have a motion and a second to approve item number 4 of the consent agenda?
Motion?
Second.
Any questions on that?
I'm so excited that this is a school trip.
Yeah.
Do I need to say any more? Oh my God.
No.
Having said that, I have to abstain. I hate that.
That's okay. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Ms. Iannatelli? Number 4. Yes, it's the RMS National Junior Honor Society trip to Philadelphia.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Torgrosa?
Yes.
Ms. DiLorenzo?
Yes.
And Ms. Parisi?
Bravo to them, but I have to abstain.
And I am a yes. And now we have the superintendent's update, Dr. Sinnemore.
Thank you, Ms. Mallon, and good evening, everyone. Let me start by thanking, big time thank you to the unsung heroes of the district, We just had a very big storm, obviously. Yesterday was a school closing. Today was a delayed opening. Tomorrow we are back to a regular opening, regular time for all schools, elementaries, middle, and high school, regular time tomorrow. But a big thank you to all of our crews in facilities, transportation, who came in and did just yeoman's work with a very tough storm, and a sincere thank you to all. And of course, thank you to our community and students for your understanding. And I'm sure a lot of people were spent a lot of time digging out, and hopefully the extra couple hours this morning, especially the travel and daylight, was helpful. In terms of some other news around the district, our middle school RMS and OBMS robotics teams recently were in Lego robotics competition. Both schools placed. Congratulations to both. OBMS actually had a third place finish, and they advanced to the next round. And they also won a recognition for the Robot Design Award. The progress of both of these programs speaks to our elementary through high school robotics initiative. So thank you to all, and congratulations to all the students. Recently, our RMS students were in the musical performance of Frozen. It was absolutely outstanding. Our musical productions are one of the hallmarks of our school district. Next up will be OBMS, and they will have their production of Shrek Jr. coming up in the beginning of February 5th through 7th, and then later on in March, it's the high school's turn with Anastasia. This week, the high school will have a local scholarship meeting tomorrow night, actually, with parents and students. There's so many local opportunities. It's a great meeting to attend. There will also be the following night. This won't be at RMS. It'll be a meeting to give information about NCAA, for our student athletes, especially at the high school level, who are looking to get information about at the collegiate level. At the end of the week, our music program is back at it on Friday with the secondary jazz benefit concert that starts at 6 p.m. This is an annual event. It's a tradition. It's absolutely outstanding. The week leading into the February break, the week of February 9th, is our Random Acts of Kindness Week, culminating with on Friday, February 13th with P.S. I Love You Day. On February 12th, speaking of athletics, there will be an orientation for our current 8th grade going into 9th grade. There will be an orientation on high school athletics. Congratulations to high school senior and swimmer Declan Duran, who is just recently on News 12 as a high school scholar athlete. And oh, by the way, he happens to be this year's valedictorian. Absolutely proud. As always, we thank our PTA and SEPTA for all the wonderful events that they are part of, and the activities and enrichments, as well as all of the work that Orba does, and our athletic boosters, and Rotary and Civics. Thank you to all of these community organizations and tiers for all the work that you do for our students, staff, and community.
Thank you, Dr. Senmore. So we have our Board of Ed committee reports. We have the Bullying Prevention Task Force, Ms. DiLorenzo, Ms. Parisi.
I just wanted to put it out there relating to what Dr. Senmore said. Declan is also an Eagle Scout. Just wanted to mention that one too.
And an Eagle Scout.
Oh, did you want to go first? No. Yeah, okay. So we had our bullying prevention task force meeting last week. And we were talking about the schools were talking about the different things that they are going to be doing. The high school is going to be setting up purple flags. Students are going to be writing about someone who meant something to them on these flags. There's going to be different things coming out from the Helping Hands Club with posting positive affirmations to Post-its to put on lockers throughout the schools. So all different activities that they are doing through Random Acts of Kindness Week, which Dr. C just mentioned, ending with the P.S. I Love You Day. We also have our parent university workshops through Northwell. There's a community education series, and we did talk a lot about, a few years ago there was Screenagers that came out, and now they are doing another one which is actually more geared towards, was for the elementary students this time. It's so important because it is and I know we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that students they're getting their devices younger and younger and younger. It's changing so much. So we talked a lot about that. And of course, we always have the students that are part of the committee, which I can't say it enough. Between that and the other committees, like the Mental Health Advisory Council, our student voice is so incredibly important. And, I'm so proud of these kids for coming and speaking. So they are always there too. And of course, we had LICAB there, Joe Salomon from LICAB, who spoke about the student ambassadors that they're working on that initiative for anti-bullying and bringing that down to the elementary levels, because we all know it's important to start, at home too, and we'll never, unfortunately probably ever get rid of bullying 100%, but we can work on that at the younger levels, because a lot of times it starts at the younger level. Not at home, but it starts with the kids in elementary school. So that's a very important initiative that's been being worked on right now.
Great. I love t-shirts. I think it's really terrific. I want to see less putting of a bully in with their prey to talk and then letting them out, because it doesn't stop the bullying. I want to see some answers for that. And quite frankly, you can wear a shirt while doing it, but let's come up with something different, something that actually protects essentially the prey.
Thank you, guys. We have the Wellness and Nutrition Advisory Committee, Ms. Parisi. The Wellness and Nutrition? Did nobody go to that? Okay. The Health and Safety Committee, Ms. DiLorenzo and Ms. Parisi.
All right, John, I'm going to try to do it justice, because I know there's always a lot of information. But if I get anything wrong, please feel free to correct me, timelines or anything that I have here. All right, so we got some capital projects updates, the HVAC, electrical, being done Pearl, idle hour potentially starting in the summer. Is that right? Okay. And Slocum, I think, should have it in place in the spring. Okay. The high school roofing, we have phase 3 happening now. That's been going on. The Duffield Playground is completed. And the ADA stage lift, Basti, Idlehour, John Pearl, Cherokee, and Slocum, that we're done? No, those are the ones that we're going to be doing. Those are the stage lifts on the side, because unlike Sycamore, they don't have like wheelchair access or anything on the side to get those students. So that's being worked. That is going to be happening. And they're thinking possibly for Cherokee and Idlehour in the February break, maybe that they'll be starting that. The high school upper turf is in the drawing phase. The Idlehour boilers and the cafe HVAC are being drawn up for a bid now. I guess that'll make its way to the board at some point. We also talked about the high school acid waste reconfiguration, that they had to redo things in the science wing, but that's all been going very well, according to you, and they've been working on reconfiguring all of that. Okay. Okay, so that's the permit. Do you mind going up there so everybody in the public can hear what you said? Because I could try to repeat it, but I'm probably not going to get.
So in respect to the acid waste tank, we have our approvals from Suffolk County Department of Health. We have our permitting and everything else. We're now going through the phase of getting various quotes. Once we have that, once we know that the vendor can satisfy the requirements, we'll bring that forward for approval. And considering the nature of the work, it's going to have to be summer work.
Okay, thank you. And I know that we were doing the secondary gym, but that was the middle schools, right? The HVAC?
Correct.
Both middle schools it was?
Both middle schools, and they're both in the drawing phase as well.
Okay. And then I know you talked about the high school fire alarm, that was basically the moisture in there, that it was setting off the devices, so they're replacing those two and then the one Was that done already? Because I think it was that night that,
It was done. So with the renovations that took place in the pool, we're seeing condensation by the two exterior doors. So the devices that were there were tripping the alarm system, the fire alarm system. So we ended up insulating them. We ended up putting panels on the walls to remove them from that the temperature differential and that condensation. We insulated it, and all three pull stations in the pool have been replaced now. Yep.
okay, thank you. And I'm trying to remember, and I didn't write notes on these ones here. Did you have anything else that the kitchen fire, the wood shop?
Yeah, there's a couple
a
of
few other
things,
things
best
there.
practice that we do. It's not necessarily required. The one that is required is the kitchen suppression system. We have an Ansel system, which is a dry chemical to protect the equipment. God forbid there's a fire, but they have to be inspected annually. So that took place since the last health and safety meeting. And then we've done a couple of other things, exhaust cleaning in the wood shops and the family and consumer sciences, as well as the kitchen exhaust systems. So those were all done since the health and safety meeting we had in the fall.
Okay. And I think, yeah, the snow removal, which I think, when you were talking about what has to go on to get them there, thank you, whoever was there to do the snow removal, because what a process, getting there early in the morning, making sure that our people can get there to make it safe for everybody else. I mean, a million thank yous for that, because,
Well, and I will say something
Yeah.
something that came from the health and safety meeting, and Sarah, this is something that you brought up, was when we bring these guys in, we're doing it in the manner that's the safest way we possibly can. And making sure that they can get here is half the battle. Making sure they can get home is the other half. So we only brought in the groundskeepers on Sunday. They get ahead of the snow drifts. They get ahead of the problems in the buildings. And what we did was we bring them in when the first snowflakes start flying. Once we see that the forecast still has teeth to it, we brought the groundskeepers in that morning early. They stayed through the event, but when they left, we were still getting sleet and freezing rain and forecasted for another couple of inches. Not all the guys have large commercial trucks. So what we did was we offered to those people who would be benefit from it to take a district vehicle home that night, because they were also back first thing in the morning on Monday morning. And to a man, they were unbelievably appreciative. It was such a simple, straightforward thing to do. It's not something that's been done since my tenure, so to be able to offer that was a big win.
yeah, absolutely. Their safety is, I mean, everybody's safety, but they do have to get home. So I'm glad we were able to,
It was great.
yeah, get them home, get them back, provide means for them to do that, so.
And extremely
Thank
well
you.
appreciated. They understood it, and they across the board, they were extremely appreciative. So thank you for that.
Excellent, and thank you for filling in the holes for me.
No, it's all
Thank you.
good. Well, there was another bit, okay, yeah.
Nope. No, that's it.
Well,
That's coming up later on board discussions, right?
It came up at Health and Safety. So one of the things we did talk about was indoor air quality. Indoor air quality is something that we're always concerned about in the facility side of it. And we started talking about particular buildings and some of the historical information that's come from the buildings. So as a result of that, it's definitely something that as a department, myself mainly, is going to have to get into the buildings, talk to people more, not just expect people to come forward and everything else. So I've got to do a little more outreach and make sure that I'm getting the information as best as I possibly can. To that end, I'm actually going to be going up to the CTA's offices on Friday, and I'm going to be speaking to that a little bit as well, and reintroducing myself. I know most of the staff at this point, if not by name, certainly by faces, but I want to make sure that they feel comfortable sharing historical information as well as current information, because I don't want to see history repeat itself. So,
Thank you, Mr. Allen, and thank
Thank you
your
very
team
much.
for all their work this weekend. Board of Ed topics. We have district updates from Ms. Inatelli.
I want to echo what Dr. Ciameni said. I want to thank our transportation and our buildings and grounds for their amazing dedication in the storm aftermath. I know ensuring our schools and buses are safe for all students take time and a lot of commitment, so thank you. The next update is some parents and community members have reached out to me regarding the bullying concerns in our district. I want to provide an update and assure you that the board hears you. We are actively working with administration to develop a stronger, more effective process that addresses the gaps that have been identified. This issue has also been formally added to our board goals. I'm excited by the direction we are moving in and remain committed to creating a safer, more supportive environment for all students. My last update is many community members, some have emailed us, some have reached out about the moment of silence. They asked why the board hasn't had a moment of silence for others since we did for a person a few months ago. I'd like to be clear that the board consistently doesn't usually have a moment of silence for anyone but military. On the day this person was added, it was not a planned or approved by all. It was suggested in the moment and happened. Again, not normal procedure. I can only speak for myself, but I believe, on a whole, we, the board, try to stay consistent in the fact that our moment of silence is always and should be for military.
The Frozen Junior was absolutely incredible. I was so impressed with their kids and their performance. I mean, I can't believe how they did Let It Go. I love that song. It's been played probably thousands of times. But I honestly think the way they did that entire scene with the snow and the smoke machine, it was so incredible. And their voices, their talent, just really, really wonderful. And Olaf and baby Olaf was one of the most adorable things. It was so cute. So I have to give you all so much credit, all the students that were on the stage, and of course the ones behind the scenes, making it happen, making sure that everything was on time, the director, everybody, all the staff that was involved in putting this together. It was such a wonderful night of entertainment. I took my daughter. She loved it. It was really, really fantastic. So thank you for a wonderful evening out. I'm usually either at work or at a board meeting, so that was nice to have something a little different. It was really wonderful. Great job to everybody who was part of that. I'm totally looking forward to the other plays. One of my favorite things is our musical. Great job, everyone.
Yeah, so I can't agree with you more. It was just, I told Melissa I wanted to bring baby Olaf home. He was just so freaking cute, so adorable. The talent every year just amazes me, surpasses every expectation. Everybody does a good job, from the directors to the behind the scenes to lighting. Amazing, amazing work. Facilities, checks, and balances, Miss Parisi. Oh, okay. No, that's okay. Does anybody else in the public want to speak? All right, can I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.